All right, well, I just got my cue, so we'll go ahead and get started completely here. Once again, thanks everyone for joining. Um, I was kind of saying earlier, it's hard to believe that this has rolled around again. It seems like it was only a week or two that we were doing the last one. I guess time is flying, and we're kind of marching on into official fall here. So welcome everyone. Um, I'm Matt Bird. I'm a customer support specialist here at Rusticy Software, and in today's topic, we'll be talking about configuring accounts to license either your content or your account library, and ways to set limits on those things before you distribute it to your customers. Um, a little bit more about me. Um, this is a slightly different iteration of this. I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary here, working on support for Content Controller. And some exciting news has kind of come up for our family recently. So pictured over there is my almost 2-year-old son and my wife Julie, and we're expecting our second child uh, here at the beginning of October. So we'll be on official baby watch here in just a week or two. So we're excited and nervous, and that's also all to say that I'll be out for at least a couple of weeks. Um, but if you haven't met or worked with Michael Reinhardt yet, who's another member of our support team, primarily for Content Controller, you're in great hands with him. I'm honestly a little bit worried because when I come back, people won't want to talk to me anymore because they've been dealing with Michael. But yeah, just some exciting news and kind of what's been going on with me personally lately. This is we're really excited and nervous about this. Um, and so a little bit more about the specifics of what we're going to be talking about in today's session is the topic of licensing. And what we'll be doing kind of in the demo portion is we'll be configuring or setting up an account. This is the best way to demonstrate how to set up those licenses. This is a good way to kind of limit outside or learner access to your content through a third-party LMS. If you need to place limits on things like learners, registration, set a time duration, things like that. So um, we'll go over the different account license types, how to set those up, and the different limits that are available for you to get set up when you're creating an account in Content Controller. Once everything's been established, you can track the number of learners that are being counted towards those licenses. And Content Controller has some built-in functionality for sending out alert emails that will let you know when a license or multiple licenses might be getting close to their limits, so that you can let those folks know and kind of keep track of communication with that particular customer. And also some upcoming, what's on our roadmap here for the next few months. I may or may not be out in October, but we're really excited about our user conference. This is, I believe, the third one. So do save the date for this. There will be a lot of good talks, and I think several around Content Controller in particular that you'll want to tune in for. Dottie's going to be talking about reporting, another really popular feature and piece of functionality with Content Controller. So be sure to get signed up for that session and any or many others that you might find useful. There'll be a lot of good talks about that, and I know we're really excited about that. When we roll on into November, we'll talk about versioning, making sure that any updates that you need to apply to your content to get out to learners as quickly as possible. Versioning is, again, another one of our really popular features of Content Controller, so be sure to check that one out as well. And then in December, we'll kind of be delving into some more of our kind of advanced topics. I love talking about the API. I love answering questions about it. And when I get time, I love tinkering with it. So the automation API is a pretty powerful tool once you kind of get started with it and get familiarized with it, to help you do things like automating repetitive tasks or streamlining a workflow. So be sure to check these out as they come up. And we're excited to keep doing these, and we're excited about today's topic as well. Here's a list of resources. So that bookmark there in the bottom right is kind of a one-stop shop for all of these. And again, I always like to say, if maybe you don't have some of these bookmarked, or you don't, there's a place where you're maybe looking for specific documentation or specific resources. Feel free to reach out at any time to us on the support team here. Myself, Joe, and Michael will be happy to point you in the right direction. And we've got kind of fast tracks to these links as well with these resources. So we're always happy to help if you need any information about what we're talking about today with respect to licensing, or any other topics that you might be working with or coming across in your day-to-day work within Content Controller. And then a bit of housekeeping notes. We're going to try to keep our questions on topic. I know that's kind of a note for me too, as sometimes I tend to wander a little bit. But we're specifically talking about account setup and licensing. And I'm going to try to do my best to leave as much time as possible at the end of today's talk, so that we can handle questions as they come in. We've got some folks working in the background that are keeping track of those, and I believe Michael will come on camera and read some of the questions to me so we can address those towards the end of today's talk. And so that's going to take me into kind of the demo portion. It's a little bit more of a bigger demo. I'm going to basically demonstrate setting up an account from scratch, because I've often found if you've sat through one of our training calls as you're onboarding with Content Controller, it's a good way to demonstrate how to set up licensing, how those licenses work, how to apply certain limits to either an individual content item or an account. So give me 1 second here, and I am now sharing my Content Controller screen. So where I've landed in mbird.contentcontroller.com here is in my accounts section. So if you've got, maybe you're onboarding a new client, you have learners from a separate LMS that you want to start tracking and getting your content out to from your content section and Content Controller out to an account. You're going to want to create an account. We kind of think of this as a tenant. Many of our Content Controller folks will specify one account per LMS that they're using, and in addition to that, many times they have their own sort of licensing needs and ways to set limits on either the content items or the account itself. And I'll go over some of the differences there here as I'm setting up the account. So I'm just going to click on the add button here in the top right corner of the screen, and I'm going to name the account just to keep it near the top. I'll preface it with these zeros, and I'll just call this the Matt Chats demo account. Nothing has changed. I still can't spell. At this point, it's going to challenge me to select a license type. And so you've got three options here for the licensing that's going to apply to this account. The first license type is the unlimited license type. And this is used in the case that you're not going to explicitly define any limitations on individual content items within the account itself. Maybe you don't want to set limits for a particular client or an internal LMS or something like that. For a lot of our Content Controller folks, this is a common use case. Some people do have maybe licensing or limitations that they handle separately, that they do maybe outside of the context of Content Controller. If I'm setting up an unlimited license type, none of this is to say that you're necessarily giving free reign for learners or full keys to the kingdom, quote unquote, so to speak. This is just, I like to describe it as maybe a more hands-on approach. At any time, if you create an unlimited account type, you can deactivate the entire account, or you can deactivate individual content items within the account. This will effectively cut off access, much the way that an enforced license would. But it's a little bit more of a hands-on approach. So in the example that maybe I've got 5 or 6 other accounts that have content items from my global content pool or my content section, and I've got an unlimited account that I've shared content with. If I deactivate that content item, in other words, I want to cut off learner access, it'll only, at the account level, it'll only affect that account. It won't have any impact on any other accounts that have that content item. So you can kind of manage it that way. And some of our folks do this. But really kind of the meat and potatoes of this is the other licensing types and the limits that you can set. Um, because this will kind of handle creating those licenses and enforcing those for you. And it's in hopes to make your life a little bit easier. So the next license type here is limit by content. If I were to select this, this is, these are limits that you can place on individual content items within the account. So within your content library, if you've got content items that maybe you have different licensing needs for, in today's talk, I'm kind of using sports. We use the golf sample course a lot, but sports related courses as examples. So let's say I'm creating this Matt Chats demo account and I want to share my golf course with this account, but I've got a different licensing need for that individual course. Maybe I want to limit it to just 10 learners for maybe the period of 10 days for like a sampler type thing. In addition to that, I'm going to bring over maybe my tennis course, but I want to license that course a little bit differently than I do my golf course. Maybe I want more learners to be able to access that, and I want to enforce a date duration differently. So if you have different licensing needs for different content items across your account, limit by content is often the way to go. This will, once you set this up, this will challenge you to apply a license, a separate license to any content items that you're sharing with the account. So there is a bit of some setup steps involved with that, especially as you're sharing content with that account, because we will ask you to apply a license to it since you've set up the account as limit by content. The last option is limit by account. And I will say that amongst the folks that we've worked with, or from what I've seen, this one seems to be a little bit more common or more popular. This is basically one license or one set of limits that you're specifying for the entire account library. That is, maybe you're selling access to your entire content library for a specific amount of time, something like that. So this is just going to ask you to apply one license. That license is going to apply to the entire account. And when I'm talking about licenses, and you may have heard me kind of throw around the term limits, I do want to kind of specify the 3 different limits that are available. And I'll do that by going ahead and kind of proceeding through these account creation steps. So I'm going to choose the limit by account license type because for demo purposes, this is the example that I'd like to use. Down here underneath the license types, you've got a option to enable or disable license disable access. This kind of pertains to maybe how lenient you want to be in terms of enforcing any limits that you set. By default, this button is checked, as most folks, if they're setting limitations, they want to enforce them. If I've set a learner limit of 10, once that 11th learner tries to access a content item, we want to cut off access and enforce those limits. An alternative to this is if you've got maybe such a relationship with certain clients that you're working with where maybe you never effectively want to cut off access or you want to allow them to exceed those limits and maybe kind of keep communication separate, you can uncheck this box. This will still allow you to define a license, set it up, attach it to the account, and keep track of it. But in the example that I was giving you earlier, let's say I've defined a license of 10 learners. Once that 11th person accesses the course, they'll be granted access and they'll be counted towards that license. So you'll see an 11 out of 10 if you're keeping track of those licenses kind of in your dashboard area or in your reports. And so we have a number of folks that choose to disable this access because they never effectively want to cut off learner access to these courses that have been shared out of these accounts. But for now, just for demo purposes, I'm going to keep this button checked. Moving on, I'm going to be taken to a list of licenses that I've already set up for my content controller instance. This is useful if I've got maybe a common licensing model that I plan to use and reuse over and over again. If I'm setting up an account and it kind of gets a predefined license each time that I'm creating an account, I can just pick it from the list and move on. But since we're doing a demo here and I did want to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the 3 different limits that are available to you, I'm going to go ahead and create a license And this is kind of a way to customize a license if maybe the client or the account that you're setting up has different licensing needs. So I'm going to click the Create License button. I'm going to name it. I'll name it the demo license 2. I think during a practice run, I already named it that. So I can include any notes about the license that I want. And down here where it says add limit, I'm going to get a list of those 3 limits that I can choose from. So if I select this list, we have a learner limit. This is individual learners accessing courses through this account. And we track this based on the learner ID that the LMS assigns to the learner when they launch the course. And so that's a defined, kind of, you think of it as a unique users list. A registration limit is a little bit different, and I do like to I'm going to try to pause here just to kind of explain the difference between the two. In Content Controller, we think of a registration as kind of the unique tie or relationship between a learner and a course. So the difference here is in my limit by account scenario, let's say I have 5 courses that I've shared with this account. If in terms of a learner limit, if one learner goes in and accesses all 5 of those courses in a third-party LMS, that person is only going to be counted once towards a learner limit. By contrast, for a registration limit, in the same scenario, one learner goes in and accesses all 5 courses. That's going to create 5 registrations because you have one learner to 5 different courses. So they'll be tracked a little bit differently that way. And then the last option is pretty straightforward. It's a license duration. So if you want to time box learners, you can set up a time period that they have access to content, whether that be 10 days, 30 days, a month, a year. We've kind of seen it all. So for this, in this case, I'm going to choose 2 of these. I'm going to choose a learner limit and a duration. If I'm using more than one limit type, we're going to cap that license at whichever comes first, whether I've reached the learner limit first or whether I've reached the time duration first. So I'm going to select learner limit. I'll give it just an arbitrary number of 100 for now. And then if I want to add an additional limit, I can choose the duration option. And there, Content Controller is going to warn me about what I just talked about, saying when any one limit is reached, the account will hit the cap. So if I say OK, and let's say I want to use a month, I'm going to give the duration in days, that's 30, and then I'm going to save it. After I do that, my pre-available license list will populate with a new license that I just created. The default behavior is to go ahead and make that license active, and it's effective today. Most people keep the defaults here. In some scenarios, you can uncheck this box if you don't want the license to go into effect immediately. We've seen some people do that, but for now, I'm just going to keep the defaults. And then the next option is going to challenge me to set a predefined list of email addresses that are going to get license alert emails. License alert emails go out in the form of a digest, or will warn you when accounts or content items are said to be nearing their limits. So we have a bit of language around our thresholds for those. For learner and registration limits, a license is said to be nearing its limit when it's reached 90% of what you've defined for it. For durations, it is 75% of the total duration or 30 days, so whichever comes first. And so we kind of use a stoplight status. Your license is good. It's not nearing its limit. Once it's reached those thresholds that I just described, the license will said to be nearing its limit. And then if you've reached a cap of any sort, you've reached your learner, registration, or duration limit, it'll be said to have been exceeded, and it'll show as red with a status icon. And so these license alert emails will go out to a predefined list of email addresses. I can add more than one if I want to, and they will go out daily if a license is said to be nearing its limit. So this is meant to kind of let you know that you're getting close to maybe to reach out to these folks to talk about maybe restructuring or something like that. So I already get a number of these license alert emails. So just for demo's sake, I'm going to choose to disable those for now. And then I've arrived on my last step here. And this is nice because it gives you a little summary of what you're about to do. You're about to create a new account called the Matt Chats demo account. The license that I just configured kind of in a custom fashion is going to apply to the entire account rather than individual content items, and it's effective today. And I've chosen to disable those alert emails. And so when I create the account, I'll be taken to kind of the blank slate here for this new account. I've got the account details showing here, and I've got my licensing information. The cupboard is bare, so to speak, with this one, as I haven't shared any content items with this account yet. But it's nice because you can kind of keep track of in progress and total learners and total registrations once you do have a learner population. Once you've distributed content through the standard of your choice, and learners start launching content in a third-party LMS, we're going to start keeping track of them. And if you have licenses in place, we're also going to track the learners that are applied to that specific license. And so here's another example of your status icon. Obviously, my license here is green, so I'm good. When I've reached one of those thresholds, say the learner limit reaches 90, this is going to turn to yellow. If I've configured license alert emails, those will start going out as I'm getting close to my learner limit. And then if the expiration date or the learner limit gets met, this will turn into red. And so you can kind of see more information about that in some of your reports as well. Another thing I wanted to note here is we often have people maybe need to make adjustments sort of on the fly. So you can edit a license in place. Let's say, for example, maybe I made a mistake and I meant to give this a learner limit of 150. So if I've got a license that's in place for the account, I can just navigate to the account. I can click on edit here and I can adjust the learner limit. I can also adjust the expiration date to extend it, or make it more strict if I need to as well. This applies to any limits that you may have set for a license. So I'll save that, and you can see my learner limit automatically update. And then just as another example, just to kind of show you what, to back up a few steps here, I created this demo account as a limit by content account, or limited by account, excuse me. So I'm going to only have one license that's available for this account. If I need to add another one in behind it, maybe I want to do some preliminary work to set things up to maybe make less work for future Matt when I'm setting up licenses. I can add another license in behind it, but only one license can be active for an account or a piece of content at any given time. So I wanted to show you the flip side of that, and that is another account that I have sort of set up here. If I can find it here, it's the limit by content sports example. And so in this case, this is a limit by content account. I've got my golf course, my tennis course. I've got separate licenses that apply to these individual content items. And then I have a package of 3 sort of water sports courses that I'm applying licensing to through a bundle. A bundle is a grouping of content if you're using a limit by content account that you can set limits to. That is a grouping of courses. So it's useful. So a lot of people have found that if they have maybe a in Content Controller, one course represents one module for a greater curriculum, and you need to apply licensing to that grouping of modules in a limit by course perspective, I can apply any of those limits that I just talked about to an entire bundle. And so this water sports package has 3 courses. I've kind of gone in and done some dummy launches to populate different numbers here. But I just wanted to kind of give an example of what maybe a limit by content account looked like by contrast to the example demo limit by account. So this is about it with respect to what I talk about kind of during the demo portion. I believe, yeah, well, I got close. I'm at about 6 till we cut off here, and so I wanted to kind of turn it over to see if there were any questions. So, Michael, did we get anything from the chats?
Let's see. I think I came on camera.
Yeah, I can see
Yes,
you.
I did. Okay, so I've got one question so far, and everybody, if you've got questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. But we've got, if I want to set the next license for an account, but don't want to have to remember to activate it, how can I do that automatically?
Yeah, so one of the maybe might describe this as maybe a more advanced feature for licensing is this concept of auto rollover. So in the example that I was using earlier, let me navigate back there. I can't remember what I call things these days. But you can see that this license is set to expire on the 10th. Um, you can put another license in place behind it. So if I click the add license button, and let's just use the example that I already set up. Um, you can see this little auto rollover button. So I can put a license in place behind the one that is currently activated. And if I want the license to automatically roll into that new license that's behind it, I can select this auto rollover feature. Now there's 3 separate conditions that need to be met in order for this to work. The first one is the effective date of the license that you're rolling into. I'll call it the target license, has to have been met or passed. So that's the first one. The second one is a learner has to launch a course against the expired license for the rollover to trigger. And then the first one, I kind of got my order of operations a little out of whack, but is the license that's in place needs to have been exceeded. And so with those 3 conditions are met, and auto rollover is selected for the license that you have in place behind the first one. As soon as the learner launches a course against the expired license, we have some logic in place that's going to check the license on the launch process, and it's going to say, oh, the current license is exceeded. Is there a license with auto rollover configured applied to this account? If so, let's go ahead and move the activation and activate that new license so that we can roll learners onto that new license and start tracking usage against it. So yeah, if you have more questions, we've got a knowledge base article on that topic. I think, Michael, didn't you just finish with one of those? I see him nodding.
Yeah,
I
I
may
had
have.
to come off mute. I did. I'm going to grab it and throw that in the chat as well. Let's see. Okay, we've got one in the chat from Craig. Says, if limit by account, can a license be applied to each content folder? For example, Trainer 1 has 4 modules of course folder 1 for 100 students, but Trainer 2 has 8 modules for 300 students.
Not through limit by account. Limit by account is just going to be one. You're only going to be able to activate one license at a time. Now I can go in and click the add button like I've done here and configure multiple licenses to be in place for that account, but I can only have one active license at a time. For that specific use case, that sounds like maybe you might want to explore using bundles. Bundles and folders are kind of 2 concepts that within Content Controller that are they act kind of very similarly to one another. But the way that bundles were designed, they were meant to satisfy a licensing need, so that you can set a group of limits on a grouping of content. And so it's access to module 1, module 2, module 3, and so on and so forth. And a lot of times we see folks that they will structure in their, excuse me, let me back out of this, in their content library, they will structure their folders almost the exact same way that they structure bundles because they want to set limits on those folders essentially, which represent bundles of content. And so the use case there is the way we see people utilizing bundles is in a limit by content account scenario. And so you're setting, let's say you've got folder 1 that's got 7 modules in it. You can set a specific set of limits on that bundle. And then you've got folder 2 that's maybe got 3 or 4 modules in it, and you can apply a different set of limits to that bundle, if that makes any sense.
Craig said our bundles explained, excuse me, in the user guide. I dropped the link into chat for that part of the user guide, so that way you can jump right to it.
Yeah, we've got more documentation on bundles, and if there's a, it's kind of it's a bit more of a high level, one size fits all set of documentation. If you have specific questions, do feel free to reach out to us too. We're happy to answer those as well.
Chris Mills has been asking about something that's off topic, and I was just to leave this on topic. I'll say, Chris, I can help you with that if you do me a favor and do a support ticket. I can work through hosting and get you taken care of today.
Okay, great. And thanks for your question, Chris. Yeah, anything else? I've got 10:30. So again, thanks everyone so much for all of your time and for joining us for these. If any other questions fall out of this, you think of maybe something later, do feel free to reach out to us at support, and we'll be happy to take a look with you. So thanks everyone.